I think the whole life is practice.
Oh,
Practice and learning, practice and learning.
hi Anja, welcome in this new video. And without waiting, I want to introduce you to the audience. So Anja, you spent more than 20 years in competitive skiing, and that has generated a lot of stories with lessons about performance and accomplishment, failure and mistakes. You count 2 Olympics finals, 1 World Cup victory, and 25 top 10 finishes in the physically challenging discipline of mogul skiing. Now, you are a mentor and media producer, podcast and video, in order to help athletes. You gave in 2014 a conference in TED Talk. So Anja, this is a real pleasure to welcome you in this series of video, and I want to say just 2 words. Thank you. How are you, Anja?
Thank you. I'm very well, Stefan.
Okay.
I am very honored to be part of this and happy.
That's all my pleasure. This is all my pleasure.
Okay. Well, now that you mentioned my World Cup victory, something comes to mind. And actually, at that very competition, I was standing on the top of the steepest hill on the whole World Cup circuit. And it was a very scary course that year because it was very, very icy and everybody was scared. Anyways, I was standing up there and I really didn't feel like skiing because I was scared too.
Yes.
And I had to go. And what I did to overcome my fear was, well, first of all, really try and focus in on what I had to do to get down in one piece. And secondly, was to look out in the horizon. And what does that do when you look out in the horizon? It makes you stand up taller. And I think without knowing it back then, when I look back, that helped my body tell my mind, it's okay, you're on top of this. And finally, there's one thing that we have in competition, which is kind of a gift, and that's called a countdown. So there's a countdown that goes, competitor ready, 3, 2, 1, and you go. And that countdown, I've heard a TED Talk since, which has been very, very, very popular, from an American life coach, whatever, who talks about this countdown. And since then I've said, okay, we're lucky as athletes to have these countdowns because it makes us do things that we're maybe a little bit scared of. But since we're programmed to go on that 3, 2, 1, go, we'll do it anyways. So I think.
How do you manage to balance your emotion, your stress, and give the better of you and have the better mindset before starting? Because you don't manage your time, so you have a pressure outside that say 3, 2, 1, now it's your time. So can you tell us a little bit how you manage all your things, all your thoughts inside you? Yeah.
So, well, one thing that I find very useful is like kind of a mantra that goes that you can always do more than you think you can. Wow. And that's kind of self-reinforcing because you're there with that mindset of, oh no, can I really do this? And reminding yourself that, yeah, it's going to be fine. That's really, really simple, but it really, really helps.
Okay, so mainly that the mantra that you used to before every competition?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And do you keep using this mantra?
And not just in competition. Whenever I have to do something where it's now,
okay,
that's where I'll go. So as to not postpone, I have this. Okay, you're gonna be fine. And it seems so simple, but just like cheering for yourself instead of like think of it as if it's someone, your kid or someone that you love that is gonna go do a performance. You wouldn't say to them, "You're not gonna be doing this well. You're not gonna be all right with this, you're going to fail. No, you're going to be cheering for them. And that's what you're going to do for yourself as well.
Mm. And you know, Anja, very often people, when we speak about people like you, like high achiever, we think that you are different. People think that you are different, that you born with more capacity, or you are born with a strong mindset. Or so I want to ask you to be the more transparent as you can and as you want, and really to say to people, if you have the experience of fear very often, if you have the experience of stress very often, how do you feel with your own self-esteem and how self-confidence? Because the goal of these interviews is to make people understand that everyone can do something big in life. There is no limit. The only limit is in our mind. So I want to listen to you about this topic, please.
Well, I think that another advantage that we have as athletes is that we know that there's practice and competition, and sometimes you do well and it's great, and sometimes you fail, as you say, or you don't do well. You get disappointed, but then you go back and practice and you redo. And in that competition setting, that's all okay. That's the way it works. And it's not like we are a failure if we fail. So of course, like if you don't do well, you get disappointed, but in a way, you know it's okay because you go back, you practice, and then you try again. And of course, if it's a big event and it's like it's the Olympics, and that's just the thing that you don't want to fail, and you don't do as well as you can, it sucks. And it takes some dealing with afterwards. But you also got to put things into perspective and say, okay, it's better to have tried and been there than to have just given up beforehand. Well, that's my philosophy.
Okay, so for people, for instance, that are looking for love, or to increase to get their relation, the couple better, the family better, or the career better, the advice would be, if I understood well, maybe to consider all the action like practice. And sometimes we're gonna fail, sometimes we're gonna win, but if we consider all these like practices, we gain experiences.
Yes. I think the whole life is practice. Practice and learning, practice and learning. Best you can do if you wanna do something that you're a little bit afraid of is do the countdown. And of course, there are different variations of doing it. You can actually do the 3, 2, 1, go, but you can also do it on a little bit of a longer scale, and just give yourself a deadline for something. With I've got to do this by Friday, and then the days up to Friday is your countdown. But if you say I'm going to do it sometime, it's just not going to happen.
Okay.
If it's something you're really scared of. So a deadline, I think, is a good thing. I had a very big challenge that I put myself through just before Christmas last year. I thought it would be fun to run a campaign for, like, it was a dream job where you would go be an ambassador for Cancun, Mexico. So you would actually be presenting Mexico as the ambassador, or Cancun as a destination. And so that would mean you'd be touristing around, making good money doing it. And I thought I'd make myself a candidate for that. But doing that meant that you had to go campaign and make people vote for you. So that means you have to go out there and sell yourself and be out there and yeah, put yourself out there. And that's scary. But again, if like I decided my strategy would be to do a live video on Facebook every day for the campaign. And the first live, I don't know how many countdowns I did before hitting record. But it's with everything. Then the second day was easier. The third day was easier. And now I do this all the time, pretty much. I think motivation comes from the inside. So it's something that a part of you has got to enjoy. A part of you has got to want to try. And so if what you want to do is something that there's really nothing inside of you that wants to do it, you're going to rely a lot on self-discipline, and I'm not a big fan of that. I know that self-discipline helps you, but I don't think you can rely on that. I think you got to find that spot inside of you and be aware of, this is what drives me, and then you nurture that bit. And how do you nurture it? By celebrating what you're doing, by being proud of what you've been doing. Mm-hmm. Because if you're just constantly picking on yourself and say, I could have done better, I could have done better, that's not very nurturing. But so it's back to the cheering for yourself. You got to cheer for yourself to keep your motivation. If nobody's cheering for you and you're not even cheering yourself, it's getting harder.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. So advices are, if we have fear of, if we are out of the comfort zone and we have to act, we have to count. Is the mantra that we can do always more than we think that we can do. Then celebrate not being on always, I want to do more, but be able to recognize all our evolution and progression and celebrate it. Okay. That's really good tips. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna use them.
Well, I have one more.
Okay.
I have one more.
It's a bonus. Bonus track.
My bonus tip is when you're skiing, you always try to find a flow, whether you're skiing freestyle or free ride or alpine skiing. You're always trying to go for the flow, and sometimes you put in a little resistance to control your speed. But if you want to get somewhere with flow in life, you gotta not just push yourself harder and drive yourself harder. You gotta also look at where the resistance is. And if you can adjust a little bit on that resistance, you might not need as much self-discipline and drive and motivation, because things are just getting easier. And I know it's easier said than done, but I really try to live with that as my life philosophy. And it has guided me to take some pretty important choices in my life. And I think it's a good metaphor.
So go with the flow.
Well, if you feel like you're constantly hitting some kind of resistance, maybe you should, find a way to get around that obstacle in a more graceful and fun way.